White House trade advisor and Trump confidant Peter Navarro has once again targeted India for its oil trade with Russia. Navarro alleged that India did not need Russian crude oil and that the imports were a refining, profiteering scheme and a laundromat for the Kremlin. Speaking to reporters, Navarro alleged that India had dramatically shifted its energy purchases since Moscow's invasion of Ukraine in Feb 2022.
India bought virtually no Russian oil. Let me say it again. Prior to the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, India bought virtually no Russian oil. I mean, it was like 1% of their needs. So the argument somehow now, as the percentage has gone up to like 30 and 35%, that somehow they need Russian oil to cool their homes or cook or drive their cars is nonsense. India doesn't appear to want to recognize its role in the bloodshed. It simply doesn't. It's cozying up to Xi Jinping. Is what it's doing. It's not act. And by the way, I wrote that article in the FT just to deal with the propaganda of the Indian government to make people want to feel sorry for them. Oh, they need the oil. They don't need the oil. It's a refining profiteering scheme. It's a laundromat for the Kremlin.
This is not the first time Navarro has made such a bizarre allegation. Earlier in the article for Financial Times, Navarro had called on India to stop buying Russian crude oil. New Delhi has immediately called out Navarro's litany of lies against India. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar said the US itself had asked New Delhi to help stabilize global energy markets by buying Russian oil. Jaishankar said he was perplexed by the US tariff stand on India.
Well, I don't want to comment on a person, but let me comment on the subject. We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian oil. That is China. We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian LNG. I'm not sure, but I think that is the European Union. We are not the country which has the biggest trade surge with Russia after 2022. I think there are some countries to the south. We are a country where actually the Americans said for the last few years that we should do everything to stabilize the world energy markets, including buying oil from Russia. Incidentally, we also buy oil from America, and that amount has been increasing. So, quite honestly, we are very perplexed at the logic of the argument that you had referred to.
As Jaishankar pointed out, India isn't the biggest purchaser of Russian oil. It is China. Also, the biggest buyer of Russia's LNG is European Union. Now, let's look at some numbers. LNG, the share of EU is 51%. China, 21%. Japan, it is 18%. This is LNG. Let's take a quick look at the crude oil. China, 47%. India, 38%. EU, 6%. Turkey is 6%. Now, pipeline gas, all from Russia. EU 37%, China 30%, Turkey 27%. So this is what EU, China, Turkey and Americans, and I'll show you, are trading with Russians. Earlier, MEA spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal said targeting India is unjustified and unreasonable. He called out the nations criticizing India as Russia's biggest business partners. And he said, India's import will ensure affordable energy cost to the Indian consumer. He also said the very nations criticizing India are themselves indulging in trade with Russia. USA continues to import Russian uranium hexafluoride for its nuclear industry. USA imports Russian palladium for its EV industry, fertilizers and chemicals. EU had a bilateral trade of euro 67.5 billion in goods with Russia in 2024. EU-Russia trade in services estimated at 17.2 billion in 2023. This is the fact of the matter. This is the fact of the matter. And more than that, the real money is being made by the European Union. The people who are actually benefiting are the Americans, they are the Chinese, and that's where the real money is. Like EU-Russia trade includes fertilizers, chemicals, iron and steel and machinery and transport equipment. Now let's call out the Trump's hypocrisy in trade with Russia. The spike is clear. Since he took oath in January, US imports from Russia nearly doubled, jumping from 196 million to 405 million per month. In 2024, US total annual import from Russia were 3 billion. In first 6 months of 2025, US has already imported 2.5 billion worth of goods. And at this rate, last year US-Russia imports could double in 2025. So let me just introduce my guest, Professor Scott Lucas. He joins me from Dublin, Ambassador Deepak Vora and Dr. Rajan Kumar from JNU. So, Professor Lucas, why is Navarro attacking India again and again? Every 72 hours, he gives a press statement, sir. Is there a method to this madness?
Let me say, first of all, on the issue of India buying Russian oil, I understand why India buys Russian oil. It's getting a discount on Russian oil because of the international pressure, including sanctions on Russian oil. But as has been pointed out, it is doing so within the price cap set by the G7 countries. I personally would hope that India would look at other suppliers of oil. But that's because of my position on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And we can discuss that later. Let me be clear about Peter Navarro. He is using the Russian invasion of Ukraine as a pretext simply to batter India in the way that he has battered China for years. That is because Peter Navarro is an economic protectionist. He's almost like a warrior protectionist. That is, the United States should not have to observe the rules of the international economy, the rules of international trade that we have had since the 1950s. The US should be able to just simply slap tariffs on countries and bully them. And as you know, of course, even before we talk about the India-Russia oil issue, the Trump administration had already slapped a 25% tariff on India and had effectively collapsed trade talks that India and the United States had had earlier this year. So no, this is another example of Peter Navarro being an economic bully. I went and checked just before I went on air with you. Before last month, I cannot find record of Peter Navarro commenting on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He just suddenly has developed this interest as a way to justify increasing the tariffs on India.
Absolutely. Dr. Rajan Kumar?
Yes.
You know, is it a sudden interest or is it just a tactic for to create pressure on India so that some concessions on agriculture can be made, and not realizing the fact that there are certain national interests which cannot be compromised?
I think it's a cocktail of ignorance and arrogance. Americans, they are known for hypocrisy, and what you see is absolute hypocrisy here. And Navarro is not somebody who should be guiding India's policy. India should pursue a very independent policy and not come under pressure the way, for instance, Japan or even European Union came. And it's very sad, some of the countries like European Union, which could have registered the mercurial policies and the very arrogant policies of United States in terms of tariff, but with a population of roughly 450 billion and an economy of roughly 20 trillion economy, even European Union, if you see most of the leaders, the way they met and the way they were praising President Trump. So that shows, that's the kind of message that, the president is taking. He's taking that, he understands that if Japan, if European Union, if these countries can be subordinated, then what is India? But he doesn't know that India has always pursued a very independent policy. Even during the Cold War period, when its economy was not very strong, when, it was not a very powerful country, the way it is today, So even during the Cold War period, it didn't follow the American diktats. So this is pure arrogance. This is pure hypocrisy, and I think this, as you rightly showed in your program just now, that how other countries are importing. But my logic is slightly different. That even if that logic that other countries are import, why do we have to go by the other logic? We should simply say to the Americans that listen, this is not about just the trade. We didn't start the war. We don't want Ukraine and Russia to fight. NATO is responsible for the war which is happening, and so we are not responsible for that, and they should not be dictating us. First, they dictate us in the case of Iran, that we cannot import from Iran. Second, they are saying that we cannot import from Russia. So that is something which is unacceptable, because it's not going to stop here. Let me tell you, today they are talking about this what you call Russian oil. Tomorrow they'll talk about the defense. So we are not going to accept American pressure. This is pure bullying technique, and we have to stand very firm. And I completely support India's policy at this moment that we should continue importing oil and other things, irrespective of what Americans tell us to do. We should not be listening. And our policy to go have a dialogue with the countries of the global south, that's absolutely appropriate policy, and we should pursue that policy very strongly.
Okay, Ambassador Vora, do you think that the TACO, which you said, the TACO will apply in this case eventually with McDonald Trump?
Yeah.
Quote unquote. That's your word.
Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you, Ambassador. Oh, very loud and clear, sir.
Thank you. I'm very far away. I'm in one of the most beautiful parts of the world called Leh.
Don't tease me. I know, I've been told this.
So if my image is not coming across very clearly, that's because Donald Trump is messing around with it. Now, sir, has anybody accused Donald Trump of being smart at international relations? Or I didn't even know that Peter Navarro was an economist. I am. I'm a regression analyst. Does he know anything about economics? The man is a buffoon. Sir, I will buy from wherever I can, where I get the best possible price. Trump is a deal maker. Come, sir, let's get real. What does America buy? Let's say they buy something from China for $10. Argentina says, I'll give it to you for 10 cents. Would he not rush to Argentina to buy it? He's a deal maker. He should understand that we buy it from whichever source I get it from, because I need energy. It's my largest import bill, and I've saved billions of dollars. And this other clown, what's his name? Navarro. This guy goes around, he's Trump's caged parrot. He says what he thinks Trump wants to hear. He might just become Trump's dustbin and be chucked into it. He has no idea. Why is he picking on me? You have an issue with me on tariffs because I'm buying Russian oil, but our technology agreement, our space agreement, our health agreement, our whatever we are doing in agriculture is continuing apace. If your enemy is China, as you have said, Mr. Trump, please listen to me. You say your number one enemy is China, not Russia. Russians are white. You are. This is a number one enemy. China, the only country in the world that can take on China frontally. You may have heard of that country. It's called India. So we just do not understand what you are up to. If it's because we have denied that you mediated between India and Pakistan and prevented a nuclear war, what do you want me to say? You want me to turn around and tell the Nobel Committee in Sweden, where they're having major issues of their own, that please give this guy a Nobel Peace Prize, and then will you kiss us on both cheeks and say, darlings, do what you want? I just don't understand whether it's personal, it's political, or it's international affairs. I have not understood this guy, sir. I've been 52 years in diplomacy, counting I'm 74 years young. This guy is unlike any creature I've seen on God's planet.
Okay. Professor Lucas, my question is twofold. One, the Guardian published a report that Trump wants for some time out of this entire Ukraine issue. It's like a timeout. So in this case, sir, if Trump is going for a timeout, and it's being reported by Reuters that the Putin says, give me Donbass, keep NATO out, I'm happy, we can have a deal. Do you think that this tariff issue can persist for a long time with India? Trump could persist with it for a long time in terms of sanctions, sir?
Well, I think there's 2 points here. I think the first, specifically on Ukraine and Russia, is that Trump swings like a weather vane. So if you and I had been talking last Friday, he was being manipulated by Vladimir Putin. He was dropping his demand that Russia end its invasion, that it cease fire. Then 72 hours later, the Europeans and the Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky went to the White House and were very successful in getting Trump to say, no, you need to talk about Ukraine's security. You need to defend it against what has now been a 42-month full-scale Russian invasion. I hope that position lasts. I mean, today, as I talk to you, the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is talking to Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky about those security guarantees. But we can't count on this. Trump might become Vladimir Putin's best friend next week. He might decide that he's going to go off and solve another, quote, war somewhere. And he will punish India if he decides that will serve his interest. I think there's a second broader point, though, here, which is remember, if we were talking about this logically and rationally, India was back sending a delegation to the United States to try to get a resolution on the trade issue by the end of this month. There were adults in the room trying to discuss what could be done on areas like agriculture, like pharmaceuticals, etc. And there are some adults in Washington, believe it or not. What Peter Navarro has done has effectively blown up those talks by saying to India, we don't have an interest in talking to you and in negotiating. The European Union, if I could respond to Professor Kumar, and I take his point very well, and Japan have decided they have to play this long. They have to agree a framework with Trump, not an agreement yet, but a framework with Trump for 15% tariffs to forestall 30, 35, 40% tariffs at this point. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand what they're doing. India's in a different position. If they think they are economically tough enough and resilient enough, they don't have to play this long. But I would encourage the EU and India and others to start thinking about longer term trading arrangements that don't need the United States. Those are the trade deals that need to be strong precisely because of the Trump administration.
Okay, so this is where the question would come from. Does this policy change reflects a larger thinking of the capital, United States of America, their elites, or is it very Trump specific?
You're asking me?
Washington's in chaos. Oh, sorry.
Please go ahead. Professor Lucas, then I'll go to Dr. Rajan.
Yes. Sorry. Washington's in chaos right now because of the way that Trump does business. India does have people in Congress. It has people in the administration who know of its value to the United States. After all, I believe India is still a member of the Quad, that important alignment along with Japan and Australia. India is still a very important geopolitical actor in Asia. It's an actor which the United States could work with if it was worried with China.
Yes.
So you could still work with that. But the problem here is that because Trump is so individual, so transactional, look at who gets his ear. And what has happened beyond the tariffs in the last few months is that the Pakistanis have been talking to him. You're so wonderful. You should have the Nobel Peace Prize. You stopped the war between us and India. Aren't you lovely? So Donald Trump personally likes Pakistan right now and doesn't like India. And because the Trump administration is just barging through the U.S. government, destroying the way it operates, you can't say that India can use its traditional influence in other areas like Congress or within agencies to get that position back.
Absolutely. Ambassador Vora, if you would have just scrutinized the picture, I wish, I would have put that picture. But it just reminds me when Professor Lucas was sitting, Donald Trump was sitting and the picture was taken from his shoulder, OTS, over the shoulder. And you had the entire gamut of the European leaders sitting there, It was just telling you what he wants to feel, not how he wants to make the ties with Europe and rest of the world, how he wants to govern, If that picture, all of them were sitting in front of him. So, we are dealing with a different sort of a guy with a huge ego.
You are my courtiers. You are the courtiers. I'm the emperor. Bow before me, genuflect before me. By the way, I got involved in talking about Leh. I wanted to say, always a pleasure to be on your channel, sir, and to learn from you. And of course, Professor Kumar and Professor Lucas are brilliant. They're outstanding, as you are. So thank you very much. I would simply say this, he is bitten off more than he can chew. 1998, you remember we did our little nuclear boom, boom, boom. They imposed all kinds of sanctions on us. Our economy was weak at that time. Professor Kumar, I was working in government. I was in the ministry. We hurt a lot. We remember that. Then came 9/11, and then they came and said, oh, sweetheart India, darling, help us in our fight against terrorism. We know they will change again, sir. One other incident, I hope it doesn't happen, but something happens with things, he'll turn around and say, India, you're my sweetheart, come and help. My own feeling is within the next 2 weeks, you'll see another taco. So you'll see Trump will again change and turn. And the Europeans, genuflecting, the Japanese, weren't the Japanese arming Ukraine? Weren't the Europeans arming Ukraine? Then why does he slap tariffs on them? They were doing exactly what he was doing. So why? Why should he hit them? And then when he hit them, they went and said, sorry, uncle, we are so sorry. We'll give even more arms to Ukraine. We'll starve, but we'll give it to them. Kind of world are we living in, sir?
Okay,
hey, stop. I'm 74.
Okay. Okay. And a closing comment from Dr. Rajan. Dr. Rajan, my understanding of Trump may be simple, but one thing I feel is that you can't placate a bully. You can't placate a bully. Does it boil down to that?
I think, the way you understand Trump, there are 2-3 parts of him. One is, of course, the personal ego, and he has this issue, why you call it sociopath, or you call it massive ego that he carries. So a country dealing with him has to satisfy that and keep that in mind. And most of the countries have tried to do it, including, European Union, Japan, and many other leaders also. So that's one part of the story. The second part is he's also greedy. The kind of claims that he made on Greenland, Panama, and then the tariff, etc. And the way he's trying to, and third part in terms of international policy, he simply doesn't understand international trade and economics. So he's completely disruptive, and the loss that America is going to incur because of his policy is going to be massive. So what you're witnessing essentially is the decline of America as a what do you call it, superpower. We're already moving towards multipolarity, and we have entered the stage of multipolarity, and this disruption is being caused by inability of United States to influence trade and political policies. So we are already in a new world, and we have to be ready for it. The choices are that behave like an independent and great power, or try to be a partner of one of the countries. India, I can tell you, the best policy for India is to behave like an important pole, an important power.
Okay.
We don't have to, we don't have to subordinate our policy to any other country.
Oh, absolutely. No nation would like to submit its sovereignty, but I think we are dealing with a person who definitely does not understand what a rule-based order is, or what the previous administration actually ended up doing for last 60 years. Even if they were violating it, but they at least on the face of it kept to the rule-based order. He has completely thrown everything apart. Thank you, all of you. Thank you. This is all I had on Point today. I will see you on Monday at the same time. Thank you and good night.
तो अपने सोने को काम पे लगाइए, आज ही कॉल कीजिए 1-800-313-1212 पर।
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़